There are moments in people's lives that can change them forever. For these women, the biggest life-changing moment by far was when they got the news they thought they'd never hear.
They said, well, your HIV results came back positive. And I felt like my belly just dropped to the floor, and it was devastating.
She said, well, your test came back positive. I said, what kind of test? She said, HIV positive test. And I just bust out and started to cry.
I'm reading it, and I get to a part where it says that he tested positive for HIV, and all of a sudden, my whole world just shattered.
Automatically to myself, I'm finna die. That was my thought. I'm getting ready to die.
47-year-old Betty Knox, HIV positive for 2 years. 33-year-old Precious Jackson, diagnosed 6 years ago. Elizabeth Marte, at 42, the veteran, she's had the virus for 11 years.
I used to really think that only men that were homosexuals got infected. I didn't know that women could get infected at that time, back in the early 90s.
Back then, Elizabeth had been trying to clean up her act after a life lived on the edge. Sexually abused by a neighbor as a child.
We were very poor in the Dominican Republic, so he would often offer me a plate of food in exchange to let him fondle me.
Kicked out by her parents in New York at 17, Elizabeth wound up living with drug dealers, eventually becoming addicted to crack.
It was glamorous at that time, yeah, for a 17-year-old, a lot of money, a lot of, good clubs, and a lot, just luxury. And then what happened was I ended up getting hooked on cocaine. And little did I know that years later I would be having sex for a hit of crack on the streets. And I was getting maybe $3-4 for sex, just in order to get a hit of crack.
She had 3 children by 3 different men. Settled in with a new boyfriend, Elizabeth's doctor gave her an HIV test. It came back positive. Elizabeth says her boyfriend never admitted he was infected.
I was very resentful. I used to fantasize just getting a gun and shooting him. Yeah, he knew he had it. He died of AIDS, like less than a year later after I met him, after he infected me.
Bitter and devastated, Elizabeth fell into a deep depression, spiraling further into drug and alcohol abuse. After a sympathetic doctor took her into his home, Elizabeth struggled to become sober and deal with her HIV. It's been a long road back and a bumpy one. Elizabeth suffered relapses in her recovery and dangerous lapses in judgment.
When I relapsed on drugs and on crack cocaine, I was having unprotected sex for a long time, for a lot of times. Even after I was diagnosed with the HIV virus during my crack relapse. So I prostituted again after I found out I was HIV positive. I slept with many men. I don't know. Hundreds of guys. It's not that you intentionally want to infect people, but when you're under the influence, all you're thinking is about how to get the next hit. All you're thinking is about doing whatever you can do in order so that you can get some crack cocaine and smoke it.
Elizabeth has no idea whether she infected anyone. Experts do say the virus is not as readily transmitted from women to men. It's more common for men to infect women.
Because women are a reservoir, which means that they're more likely to be infected from sexual transmission, because when the infected semen gets into the vaginal vault, it sits there.
While the spread of HIV in the U.S. is frightening, it's even worse in other parts of the world. Worldwide, nearly 38 million people are living with HIV and AIDS, 17 million of them women. In Asia, there are nearly 7.5 million people who are infected, 2 million in Latin America and the Caribbean, 1.3 million in Eastern Europe. A disproportionately high number of cases are in Africa, where 26 million people are infected.
This patient is complaining of productive cough, loss of weight, and diarrhea, lack of appetite. She was treated by the traditional healer 3 weeks ago.
In southern Africa, the virus is so widespread, some countries have trouble keeping track of AIDS deaths. In this South African township, cemeteries are filled with freshly dug graves. Other needs in those poverty-stricken areas, though critical, are nowhere near as serious as the AIDS crisis.
The whole situation begins with AIDS, it ends with AIDS. Things that were here before AIDS, things that are here will be here after AIDS. The common junk that gets pushed aside, that gets obscured, that gets ignored because AIDS is here.
In a few African nations, nearly 40% of the adult population is infected, and life expectancy is in the early 30s. In those areas, more than twice as many women as men are living with HIV. Experts say the virus is spreading because it's hard to spread the word about how people can protect themselves.
What information regarding the HIV virus itself and AIDS, and as far as how to protect themselves? The awareness program. A lot of people are not educated like Americans.
Officials have been stepping up efforts to stop the spread of AIDS. Relief organizations like U.S. Doctors for Africa have been helping, offering medical care and supplies and trying to educate the public. While they have been making progress, they still face many obstacles, cultural barriers that make it difficult to even talk about AIDS or the use of condoms.
Even birth control in some cultures, they don't use it. It's against religion. Some people are very religious. Women tend to try to please their husbands and boyfriends rather than being aggressive enough to protect themselves.
And in many cases, if a woman is found to be infected with HIV,
she will be disowned by her family, by her husband. In fact, she might actually be a victim of some kind of criminal activity, which would be including, she could be killed, really.
Those cultural barriers are not as extreme in the U.S., but they do exist. Many women are afraid to even ask their partners to use condoms.
You know, how dare you? You're gonna tell me to wear a condom? I'm your husband. Are you doing something? Are you being unfaithful to me? They'll turn around the whole thing and turn it onto the woman. And how are you gonna tell your husband, well, you know, I suspect you're having an affair with a man, or you're going out partying and getting drunk in clubs and, you know, spending 3 and 4 or 5 days out of the house and you're coming back drunk and, you know, I need to protect myself. How are they going to say that they are at risk for getting beat up?
In this country, there are still many more men than women who are infected. Of about 950,000 people in America living with HIV and AIDS, 1/4 are women. But the female infection rate has been climbing, especially among Latina and African American women.
Asian women are about 1 in 100,000 might have AIDS. White or Anglo women, 3 in 100,000 might have AIDS. Latinas, 5 in 100,000, 5 to 6 in 100,000, and African Americans, 19 in 100,000.
Those who run programs designed to help stop the spread of AIDS have been starting to notice.
You need to go somewhere else, and you probably need to go soon. We're here on Friday. Yeah, Clinic Oscar Romero is a pretty good place to go.
More and more female IV drug users have been showing up at city-supported needle exchange programs like this one to swap dirty syringes for clean ones and get advice about other services as well.
Let me give you the clinic information in 1 second.
Thanks.
Can you tip out the tray?
Program directors hope what they're doing cuts down on the practice of sharing needles and the transmission of HIV.
Are you getting these for anybody else or just you?
For me.
Okay. Heroin?
Uh-huh.
Approximately 30% of new HIV infections are attributed to injection drug use. And that doesn't just mean that the people that actually come in and get their needles are the people who are actually shooting, but it's, you know, their network, their community, their families, and the people around them that are also using their needles and sharing their works.
And now a few programs designed specifically for HIV-positive women have been developed.
That's it for the HIV meds.
This is Women Alive, with cramped offices in a tiny house on an LA residential street. The agency is run by a small staff and volunteers, some HIV positive, some not. One of the most important services they provide, testing for HIV.
And hold it there for 3 minutes.
If a client does test positive, she's invited back for counseling and support groups and to find out what to do next. The first step, finding a doctor or clinic.
Open up.
Debbie Johnson is a nurse practitioner who works primarily with low-income people who are HIV positive.
These medicines, if you take them every day, you should do fine.
She also writes what may be the only online advice column aimed at women living with HIV, called Ask Debbie. The questions have been coming in from all over the world.
Most of the shocking things that I hear from the column is the fact that there are so many women out there that are still so naive and so unaware of what their risk factors are, especially heterosexual transmission.
Both online and in the office, she runs into many HIV-positive women who don't want to take their medication because of possible side effects, thinking it won't hurt to stop. Debbie tells them they're wrong.
None of the medicines that we use kill the virus. All of the medicines do is disable the virus for your own immune system to kick in and get rid of it. And so if you're taking medicines and not taking them and taking them and not taking them, you're changing your virus. Your virus is becoming resistant to the medications.
And quite a few of her clients and correspondents don't want to use condoms with partners who are also infected because they think it doesn't matter.
I tell my patients who are HIV positive, who are taking their medications, who go into new relationships, and they want to practice unprotected sexual intercourse because they're in a monogamous relationship, and I tell them, you can't. The only person that you can trust is yourself. You cannot trust anybody else is treating you fairly. Those things are out of your control. All you can do is know what you do. So, if you're taking your meds, you don't have to worry about your viral load rebounding on your medicines. But if your partner is not taking their medicines but telling you that they're taking their medicines, and you practice unsafe sexual behavior, you're liable to be reinfected with another strain of the virus and fail the medicines that you're on.
On the issue of whether to use condoms, Debbie tells them not to take no for an answer. 49-year-old Carla Bailey, who's living with full-blown AIDS, couldn't agree more.
I had one partner, okay?
That one partner, a longtime boyfriend she'd planned to marry, infected her with HIV.
Whole world, the bottom fell out, and within a few months it seemed like I lost everything. Job, car, house, all of it. Gone, 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 gone.
Carla says if she knew then what she knows now, she would have gotten to know her boyfriend a lot better before sleeping with him. She advises other women to ask lots of questions and take nothing for granted.
We haven't learned how to talk. We haven't learned how to have that conversation before we have these sexual relationships. We need to learn to date, and I mean really date. Don't touch each other. Find out a lot about each other, especially that past history. That resume is important. I need a resume. I need a resume, okay? And I need a current of everything. What's been going on?
What you don't know don't hurt you.
What you don't know will kill you, okay? What you don't know will kill you. And if they kill you...
The ladies at Women Alive have definitely learned how to talk it out, at least with each other, and no subject is taboo.
He didn't want to use a condom. I'm like, you're crazy, you're putting yourself at risk. He's like, I don't care, you look fine to me.
Every week or two, they talk things out in group therapy.
My relationship at home, everything is on me. Till sometimes I'm overwhelmed with it, till I just want to bust out and I don't know how to tell my mate, look, I need you to help me. I need some help here, okay?
Yeah.
I can't do all of this by myself. I just can't do it. I don't, you know.
So you say you don't know how to say it?
I don't know how to tell him. You know what I'm saying? To get, you need to do something. It's something you need to help me.
Are there points now where it feels like it's still like, I can't believe this happened to me?
Sometimes, because to a certain degree, sometimes I wish I could just have a normal life. And the truth of the matter is, a lot of people talk, well, you can have a normal life now with medication and the good medication. But the truth of the matter, deep inside yourself, you know, you can really never have a real, what they call, quote unquote, normal life. Sometimes there's a part of me in the back that wishes, oh, I wish I would have never damaged this clothes. Maybe I could just walk around this world with this little secret and nobody will know about it.
But more often, the women talk things out on their own.
I know that I live with the fear of not dying of AIDS, but looking like I'm dying of AIDS.
Okay.
Yeah. Developing outward appearances.
Like the body change.
Where people can tell, you
That's
know?
what scares the hell out of me.
Okay, he's been positive for 22 years. Even though he looks good, but he's got that buffalo hump, you know, I'm going, God, I hope I don't get that.
Elizabeth, Betty, and Precious have all become AIDS activists, outspoken about their own HIV status and how they're often treated as a result.
I remember this lady, her name was also Elizabeth. Every time she would see me every once in a while, she says, oh my God, you're still alive. You know, and she just died like 6 months ago, she died.
All three women say they're very careful about who they let into their lives these days. Precious is one of the many women infected by someone she trusted. In her case, it was a boyfriend she dated for over a year who'd been vague about results of an HIV test.
I asked him if he had taken an HIV test, and he told me yes, one came back positive, another one came back negative. And I didn't bother to pressure him to get another test. I didn't want to probe too much because I didn't want to be rejected. He stated that he didn't like using condoms, so don't ask him. So I didn't.
Her boyfriend started using drugs and wound up being arrested. He broke the news that he was definitely HIV positive in a letter from prison.
He wrote me from the penitentiary and told me that he tested positive for HIV and that I should go get tested. I kind of knew that I was going to be positive because we never used condoms when we had sex. Never.
Only 26 at the time, Precious did have someone to lean on in the early days of her ordeal. She says her mother was supportive from day one.
I think she was devastated when she found out that I was positive, but she didn't show it though. She told me she was hurt, you know, that she never would think that, you know, her baby would become positive. But she said no matter what, she would be here for me.
Sadly, her mother passed away.
Sometimes I think about being really sick and being sick by myself. There are days when I get overwhelmed and I can't call her to tell her how my day went and to get her suggestion or advice on how to deal with certain things.
Still, Precious considers herself lucky. She has friends who care about her, a job she loves at Women Alive. She's even on AIDS awareness posters.
There you go.
Give me your attitude, Precious. Come on.
You ain't got the attitude.
Give me that Precious attitude.
Show them that black woman's attitude you got.
And now she also has a boyfriend who's not infected, knows she is HIV positive, and treats her with respect and sensitivity.
And his thing was like, it's more important for him to make me laugh and to be able to make me happy than in the bed.
Perhaps surprisingly, she says she's never held a grudge against the man who infected her.
I was a little upset, but I also knew I couldn't blame him because I had a role to play in this. And the role that I played in was not protecting myself.
Betty has also decided not to blame anyone else for her situation. But when she first got her diagnosis, she went into a tailspin. Betty's life was already a mess. Addicted to drugs, she'd burned a lot of bridges. Abused as a child, she says she smoked crack to numb the pain.
I kind of suppressed it all the way up to about 15 is when I started to actually get high.
During the years she was on drugs, Betty says she was also a sex addict.
It didn't make a difference how I got it. I just wanted it. So I didn't care who it was. I wasn't in an actual relationship.
She has no idea who infected her or when it may have happened.
I don't have a clue who it was. I don't have a clue.
Betty says her lifestyle has changed dramatically. She's in a serious relationship now with someone who does not have HIV.
He's not positive.
He's not positive. You know, even though my family knows.
Do you guys
It's a difference. You know, no, we haven't had sex in quite a while. But,
okay.
You know.
Betty recently graduated from a year-long program for HIV-positive recovering drug addicts.
Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Betty Knox.
I got it. I made it through.
Most of her classmates were men facing some of the same struggles she's been through.
On graduation day.
We need you not just to survive, but to excel. We need you to lead. We need you to take your experience, having proven you can beat the odds in this program, and apply it.
Betty does plan to apply what she's learned.
I want to thank my higher power first. I really do.
She won a special award for her tenacity.
Woo, I was not looking for this, y'all, but woo.
And she's determined to stay on the right path.
I've been here a short time, but I've come a long way.
Elizabeth has come a long way too, but like her friends, she's still got her work cut out for her.
And fries a little, then you throw in the steak.
And for Elizabeth, it might be a bit more complicated. One of her sons is grown, but she still has 2 younger kids to raise, including the daughter she gave birth to while still abusing drugs and alcohol.
She was 2 pounds, 10 ounces at birth. I was on the streets during my whole pregnancy, smoking crack, drinking alcohol, and prostituting and sleeping in different places and still hitchhiking to different cities.
This is Elizabeth's daughter now, 14 years old, healthy and beautiful, and worried about her mom.
Just like her sleeping or something, just dying in her sleep, and then me not be able to be there. Like I might be over at my friend's house or something.
Like most teenagers, she and her mom have many disagreements.
It gets me frustrated because then, like if I'm trying to help her, why is she not taking that advice? Because she knows that I'm right, she just doesn't want to listen.
Unlike most, their biggest arguments are about Elizabeth's decision to stop taking her HIV medication.
She hasn't told the doctor. She doesn't even tell her sponsor. Because she knows her sponsor will be like, you better take it. And then she doesn't want to take it. Yeah, I told her. I don't know if she don't want to listen to me. Guess I'm not important.
You know what it is? That my hair has been falling out.
So what? It's better to be alive than your hair being falling out.
I know, but my hair is falling out.
So?
So I'm concerned about,
your looks.
Well,
most likely.
Yeah, what's wrong with being concerned about my looks? I mean, I don't want to be bald-headed a year from now.
A year? What about if a year doesn't pass?
You mean if I don't make it to a year
Yeah.
because I'm not taking my meds? I'll make it. I'll be all right. It's just temporarily.
Stop lying.
I just don't want, this is just for a little while. So.
A little while?
Yeah,
a little while could
just
make...
for a few months. And then
A few months?
In this close-knit family, there are few secrets. Hazel and her 12-year-old brother have known the facts about HIV for years, even though they didn't always understand them.
It's like, oh, I have some disease called HIV, and you can't cure it, and then I was just like, I didn't know what she was talking about because I didn't get it. And then when I grew up, like around 10 or something, then I started to get it more.
Elizabeth feels the only way to keep her kids safe is to teach them early about using condoms for protection, although she hopes her two youngest don't become sexually active for a while. According to Hazel, so far, so good.
Because then I'll break their hands if they do anything.
Hazel knows two other kids whose moms are also HIV positive. Despite that, some of her friends don't seem concerned about the spread of AIDS and might not be willing to wait to have sex or insist on condoms when they do.
Sometimes they might just be like, oh, if I don't do this, then he's not going to think that I like him or something. And I just tell him, if he thinks that that's the only way, then to show him other ways instead of doing any sexual things with them.
It's a lot to think about at such a young age.
Oh, God.
Elizabeth doesn't want her kids to have to carry the burden alone, and that sometimes keeps her up nights.
When you're HIV positive, you're on a time budget because it's not telling what's going to happen. I mean, I've seen people look as good as I look, and suddenly they get pneumonia and they die. I'm hoping that I can stretch out to maybe another 15 years, and I calculate their ages by that time, and hopefully by then they'll be prepared.
For now, she just wants her kids to have fun like anyone else.
I remember one time we went to this restaurant to eat.
what chicken is.
And I got you guys sandwiches made out of
fish.
No, it was brain.
Oh.
Cow brain.
Like most of her friends who are living with HIV, Elizabeth tries to focus on the positive instead of dwelling on what could go wrong. She doesn't think there'll be a cure in time to help her, but if there is...
If there was a cure, I would be so happy.